Welcome, welcome. We are ending our Monday with one of the most hysterical women that I know and have had the pleasure of working with. I love her so, so very much. You will know her from a million and one things, but certainly MADD TV. And then, of course, years later as Elphaba and Wicked on Broadway. And then, of course, from Funny Girl at 3D Theatricals, her most, famous credit, if I may.
Totally.
The incredible Nicole Parker. Yeah.
I'm wearing a hat because roots, because quarantine, because hats.
Because all the things. Yeah. So I love you are a California girl, Irvine. We've talked about one of my favorite theater stories ever is the tower and Into the Woods. Like, I just need you to tell that story real quick.
It's funny because I did a thing on another friend's sort of like project. His name is Jason Daunter, and he works for Disney now, but he was a stage manager for Wicked on Broadway and many, many other projects. It's called Projects with Jason, and you should check it out because every Friday he's got local high school students singing who didn't get to do their high school musicals.
Oh, yeah.
He had Kevin Kline on doing a Q&A, Cheetah Rivera, me and Ali Mazzi, who did Wicked together. And they got students from from University High School in Irvine and from Brea Olinda. I wanted to bring up the actual drama teacher, who's not mine anymore, but the drama teacher at uni currently, I wanted to bring up the Into the Woods story. Yeah, I did. I was the baker's wife in Into the Woods at University High in Irvine. And the tower that Rapunzel stood in was not like a very safe, like very sturdy flat, if you will. It was just like stairs up the back, and then she stood there, and it was a woman named Sherry who was very tall, and she was a basketball player who was playing Rapunzel. And I went to pull the lock of hair off of her wig one night, and it didn't come very easily, and so I yanked it. And I didn't yank it that hard, but it didn't take much. I turned around, and the tower just started to go like this, and then like that. And then literally, like in a horrible dream, caught one other flat on the way down. So it crackled on the way down, and it just went whoomp. And like a cloud of dust came out, and like the orchestra pit was like this. And my mom is the best because the way that she told it, and she's gonna be here in a second because she lives right around the corner and we're quarantining together. So you might see her. But she literally said, Sherry was good. She just wrote that thing right down. I'm like, what did she have? She had no active choice. So yeah, I mean, a sound guy running down the aisle and get her up, and she looked at the audience, she went, bye. And like, I'm singing It Takes Two, but I can see like the backstage door opening to the alley where there's like on campus, they've driven like a fire truck, and I'm like, it's no fun to begin, but then what, like it was horrifying. And she finished the show, which was amazing. And the part where, she says to the witch in the second act, nothing, you just locked me in a tower, and we're at the Bear Twins, and then I fell out of that tower. She added that, which I thought was pretty cool. But it was reviewed by the Irvine World News, and it said, hurtled to the stage with a sickening thud was the byline.
Oh no.
Why would you review this high school for Eddie? First of all, hilarious that they would review and like be very critical of a high school musical. But they said perhaps Parker next time should take out a pair of shears, as if it was my fault,
Oh my God.
I don't know how there wasn't a huge lawsuit. I don't know how. I mean, I've seen that girl since that. She came to see Funny Girl, actually, TJ.
How did I miss her?
She lives in Redondo Beach. And I was like, I'm so sorry again. Sometimes I stay up at night thinking about how you could have died.
Oh my gosh, hilarious. It was one of my favorite like high school, because you see the mishaps of like that Peter Pan one when like the set just keeps falling over and kids getting flung around. And
yes. Oh my God, Dylan Pass, who was in Funny Girl. Hi, Dylan. Oh, I love that you're in the this is all I own that's Star Warsy, but it's the my husband has the I Know t-shirt,
so good. So good. So I want to talk about, you obviously had how did MADD TV was your first big thing?
Yes.
And you joined in season 9, am I right? In 2003?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So, how did that happen? How did that come to be? How do you go from, pursuing, theater, I'm assuming, and all that kind of stuff, into all of a sudden you're like on a major TV show, sketch comedy TV show? Like, how did that happen? It was, it's the West Coast SNL. It was a big deal.
That's generous. You got West Coast, right?
Yeah.
But I joke about it, but I do love that MADD TV has its own group of fans that claimed it as their own, and MADD TV fans are rad. But it was kind of by accident. I mean, I had gone to a place called Boom Chicago in Amsterdam, where like Seth Meyers and Jordan Peele and Ike Barinholtz and all these people trained as well. I was there with all of them, and it was amazing. I ironically got that job, I think, because of my voice, because they did a lot of musical improv. So at the auditions in Chicago, like I saw everybody else clam up when it was time to improvise music, and I was like, oh, finally something I feel like I can do. And they ended up doing a lot of it over in the theater. It's a very international audience, but everyone speaks English very well in Amsterdam, and so it's all Americans doing a fully, improvised and a sketch show in English for an international audience. And it taught me a lot. Like, it was a great boot camp of how to write sketches and and I did improv in college, and a friend of mine who I had done it with ended up getting that job. That's how I found out about it. And I was like, well, that sounds amazing. You live in Europe right out of college. And so it was sort of like, but what's funny is I think I was like 22, and I was like, I have to get back to New York. I have to be on Broadway. And it was just like, stay in Europe for another couple of years. What are you doing?
Yeah.
That's one piece of advice. Don't rush. You have time. You always have time.
Amen.
You're in a good situation, stay, because New York's not going anywhere. LA's not going anywhere. Even though it's shut down right now, it will be back.
Yeah.
So I ended up going straight to New York, where I was just like, I got to go and start getting involved with my, friends from Indiana University, and like getting an apartment. And I just slept on a couch on my friend's studio apartment in Hell's Kitchen. And now I'm like trying to audition for non-equity tours, but all my contacts are now in comedy. It was backwards. I was like, wait, this is not what I meant to do. I mean, I always thought, well, SNL would be really great, but I really love Broadway. I never could decide. I like truly never could decide. I fell in love with like Gilda Radner and like Bernadette Peters on the same day, basically.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there was no separating it. There never will be. That's why Funny Girl was like the perfect job in the world, and I could do it for the rest of my life. But so I mean, basically, a lot of my friends got on MADD TV beforehand, or SNL, and it really just came down to who I got in front of first. I made a video for SNL because half of my friends went there from Boom Chicago.
Right.
But then MADD TV was coming into town in New York. People put my name in. I just went in. At that time, it was one woman behind a table in like a terrible rehearsal room in New York.
Wow.
And I was like, I'll never get a job this way. This is ridiculous. And she didn't really laugh. She was very serious. I was already told by my friend she won't laugh. But at the end, she was like that. That's what I got. I was like, oh, okay. And then it was like callbacks. Yeah, then it was like 3 more callbacks in New York. And then because I had no idea how any of this worked, right? I didn't know about testing, network testing, which if you don't know what that is, that's, if you're doing a television network show, you have to go in front of the studio first, which is like Fox, and audition for like several people in suits who like also don't like to laugh. And then the very next day you have to go in for the entire network, and it's a bunch more people in a tiny lecture hall type room. And that's also quiet and intimidating. So I didn't know any of this. And I was so broke in New York, and they're like, so we're going to fly you out. I was like, ooh, fancy. They're going to fly me out and drive me to the studio. And it was very wild. And at the same time, I know they were looking at my video at SNL, but honestly, at that point, Jordan Peele had already been hired. Jordan Peele and I were both auditioning. Ike Barinholtz had already been hired, Josh Myers, a couple writers. I was like, those are all my friends. Like, yes, I would love to be on SNL too. But at the same time, when you're broke and when you're in New York, you're like, I will take the job that comes. Also because I went and visited the set, and like, MADD TV had a lot of, especially when you look at it now, most of the things are so offensive and do not hold up, and it's terrible. And then some of the stuff, I'm like, that was really funny. And that's kind of just the nature of sketch. And I just thought, well, this is great. I can live back in California, and these are all my friends. Writing with Jordan Peele for 6 years was a dream,
Right.
We were like, it was like being in college together. So, and of course, as you can imagine, I wrote every single musical theater piece I could, and music video, and Britney and Celine. And I was just like, well, I think everyone was sick of it. And I would sit and watch Wicked like clips in my dressing room because I still really wanted to do Broadway.
And I love that came full circle for you later, but we'll get to that. Mm-hmm. So then you spent 1 season as like a featured performer, and then season 10, they were like, yes, full.
Well, because that's the nice thing about MADD is that it's not like SNL where you have to like put in your dues or whatever for that long, because there's no guest stars. I mean, we had like John Cena, the wrestler. Now he's kind of a bigger deal now, but back then it was like, who?
Yeah.
To people who outside of the wrestling world. So you got to do more. You did get to do more. You know, you weren't like a waitress saying 3 lines for 2 years at MADD. You basically were pitching sketches right away and doing characters and doing impressions and doing music videos. Like my first year, I got to do a full like music video with actual Britney and Madonna dancers. Like it was that one that they started showing again, you know, that one that they did together. Now I can't remember what the name of it was. But anyways, it was like actual dancers who had done tour with her. And I was like, this is fantastic. There's like a weird fantasy here. So I did that my first year. You would never get to do that, you know, on SNL.
Right.
Of course, to be fair, the difference is you show up at like a Fox event, at like a fancy Fox event that like a car takes you to, and you get on the red carpet. And more than one time, the security guard would be like, "Sorry, guests of the talent have to stay here." And we're like, "We're on a show. We are the talent." Like, Fox never cared about MADD TV, and I think what was great about it is actually made everybody not be a jerk.
Yeah, everyone was like, they didn't take
girl. I'm not going to say a bad word. There were no jerks because you could. No one was famous from it. So it'd be like, oh, you want to have an attitude? You don't want to show up for a fitting or whatever? Look around. Nobody knows who we are. Like, and now actually I end up meeting everybody now because they were younger. Of course, I didn't go out and see people. I didn't see 12-year-olds when I went out when I was in my 20s. Now I see them because they're in their 20s and 30s and whatever. And I can meet them now. But back then we were like, no one knows who we are and our ratings are low, so don't have an attitude. And I think that's another reason. No one went through some weird state where they were like the standout breakout star from our show. There was no standout star.
You know what, like it had such a, and so many people came out of that and had really incredibly successful.
Well, yeah, now, I mean, like, yeah, Keegan and Jordan met there, and Ike has been doing great, you know, and Josh, and I mean, and then all the writers, of course, Katie Dippold, who went on to write The Heat.
Right.
And Colton Dunn, who's on, who was also Boom Chicago with me, who's on Superstore. I mean, it's so many people. It's
and so like, but then, and it had a pretty good run for.
Yeah, I mean, it was on
for
TV
having not, like you said, the best ratings. So you left in 2008, and the show, I mean, even though you came back here and there, but like the show stopped in 2009. Did you just see the writing on the wall, or why did you leave?
No, I got Wicked.
Oh, that was duh.
Well, here's what happened. It was really weird because at the time, MADD TV was being run back in like 2006 by a guy named Dick Lasucci, who worked with Martin Short on SCTV. If you know SCTV, where like Catherine O'Hara comes. I feel like people know it now because of Schitt's Creek, because of it's all those people, Eugene Levy, and so now it's getting sort of a renaissance because it was the Canadian SNL and it was brilliant. It was John Candy and Rick Moranis and all these people.
Right.
So, and I knew Martin Short. I knew of him. I loved him. He was doing a new Broadway show that was like a spoof of one-man celebrity shows called Fame Becomes Me. And Mark Shaman and Scott Whitman who did Hairspray and Catch Me If You Can, everything, were doing the music. And Mark Shaman was going to be in the show. And I idolized Mark Shaman. I loved him. I'd followed his career for like whole life. And so randomly, Dick was good friends with Marty. So this would have never happened if it weren't for that relationship, because I was on a contract with MADD TV, and they're very, very specific. When you test, that's the thing. Before you test for a network, you have to basically sign your life away. And it can be very exciting because you're like, I'll make this much money for 5 years. But you also have to think, oh, they own me for 5 years and they have the option to let you go or to not. And you can't go do other things. And it just depends on who makes the decisions. The man who made the decisions at MADD TV was very strict about that. But Dick made that happen. It was just a workshop at first, and he was just like, they're looking for like, you know, people who can do impressions and characters and whatnot. And so the audition was just for a workshop. But, you know, I had to fly out there and I had to do, you know, like an original song and character that Mark Shaman played for me. I had this weird, like the chords written out. I didn't know he was going to play for me. I was like, well, this is intense. And then I did a lot of impressions. And then it was Mary Birdsong, who was on Reno 911, if you know her, Brooks Ashmanskas, who's like a Broadway legend, Capathia Jenkins, and we did a week, and it was like the most fun I've ever had in my life. And he was so great because he was like, let's bring your stuff into the show. We ended up having a whole song where I came on and off very quickly as I did Britney Spears and Ellen and Celine, and we had this costume change that lasted 10 seconds. And, you know, it was a song they literally wrote around what we could do. And it made it into the actual Broadway show. It was crazy. But it was really hard getting people to allow me to go do the show, because we toured it for like the spring of 2005 or 2006. And then it was going to open in August, and MADD TV started taping in September.
Wow.
So they're like, here's what you're going to do. And I agreed to all of it because I was like, I'm not going to miss this. They had an understudy for me in New York. So for a month and a half, I flew twice a week back and forth. Mondays were off, of course. So Mondays I was in LA. Then I took a red eye, and I did Tuesday night, and I did Wednesday matinee. Some nights I took a red eye Tuesday night and did the Wednesday matinee and the Wednesday night, and Thursday. Friday I would miss because that was the taping. So I would take another red eye back to LA, and I would take another red eye back on Saturday morning, run into the Saturday matinee, the Saturday evening, Sunday matinee, and then do it all over again. And I mean, I was in my 20s. That's how I was able to do it. And I had to pay for all of it because both sides, say again, I got sick right away. Oh, okay. But it was fantastic because it was like, everyone was like, you're never going to be able to do this. I actually posted it on my Instagram what the schedule looked like. Someone had written it out, and I wanted to throw up when I saw it. It was just black with just like so many, and my friends backstage were like, how are you going to do this? I was just sobbing. I was like, I don't know. And then I kind of realized, well, I'm not going to die. And I was like, if I collapse, maybe I'll just be put on bed rest or whatever. But this is flying between a television show and a Broadway show. This is the most exciting thing like you're ever going to do. Don't complain. And the very first red eye I got back, I remember lying in the back of a cab. I had 2 hours before my matinee, and I felt like I had a fever. And I was just like, I don't know how I'm going to do this. And I remember being on stage and the lights, and I was like, but here's the thing. Like, this show it wasn't like doing Wicked sick. You know what I mean? Like, yes, I had some heavy singing, but nowhere near. And I just got through it. And then I got better in like a day. And then it was like, I did every single one I was supposed to do. I only missed 2 performances each week. Those were designated. I never missed an extra one. Like, when I would get to the same thing when I got to MADD TV, they're like, here's your script. Here are the changes. We put them in the props for you. Here's the camera blocking. You've missed all of it. There's the audience. And it was just like a whirlwind, but I loved it. I mean, it was exciting. It was fun. It was a challenge,
Amazing.
So I had my Broadway debut, but then like a month later I had to come back, and they only had a 6-month run. So I think I got to go back in January for the last 3 weeks of the show. So it was kind of weird, and it was really sad. But because of that show, there was a Wicked parody in it, and the same guy who casts Wicked casts Marty's show, and he was at sound check for some reason one night. We had a put-in rehearsal for someone, which is, putting someone in who's an understudy. And he said, you should audition for the real thing. And I was like, no. I was like, that's for someone who has a better voice. And that is ridiculous. I only sing that in my shower. But that is how I ended up auditioning, only because of that show.
Wow.
Because they're like, well, if you can sing those notes, we know you can sing the other notes. They're the same notes, essentially, just sort of done in a different order. And
wow.
So what happened is I went back. I did like another 1.5 years MADD TV. There wasn't a space to audition for Elphaba at that time. I thought I was auditioning for an understudy, a standby. I was happy to do that. Up until that point, there'd been a farm system where that's how it worked. Like, you did your time on tour, and you got to be a standby on Broadway, and then you got to be
how Rent was, or Avenue Q. They would feed you into
which is very smart, I think. I would not recommend how it was done to me. Right. But and there was a San Francisco company opening, and I was like, okay, maybe that, or maybe tour. I was happy with any of it because I was ready to be done with MADD. The reason why I was also done with MADD is because they made me stay. I was on a 5-year contract, but then they said, because of the Martin Short show, you have to give us another, 10 episodes or something. So I was in this weird sort of half season world when this all came up. And I could have stayed a little bit longer, and I was going to extend my contract. But then I auditioned in like August for Wicked, and then I got the job in October. Like, when they called and were like, oh no, it's Broadway. And I was like, what? I was like, are they sure? That's
Broadway?
Not smart. And I will say that back in the day, I didn't know any better. And someone told me about message boards. And I'm so glad I did this early on so that I was saved for a million other reasons in subsequent years. But I was like, oh, cool. Like, I'm going to go on and see what they say about me. And it was really funny because they were like, I cannot believe that they're already like stunt casting Elphaba. And someone ran to my defense and was like, Nicole Parker is not a famous person. She's not a celebrity. Like, that she probably got it on her own. I was like, thanks, but like, okay, let's calm down with it, but it was pretty funny. So what happened was I literally I told everyone that I was going to do Wicked. And I think maybe a week later, it was announced that MADD TV was canceled.
Oh my.
So everyone in MADD TV was like, hey, can you give me one of those monkey jobs? Is there like a monkey that does stuff? Or like, can I be the girl that we, like, they just were like, hey, you look pretty wise. So it was kind of crazy because I was like, oh, I guess I'm not going back to MADD. And it was a very strange way that it all shook down, you know.
I mean, the universe obviously had you, you know, it like God in the universe was like, hey, I'm gonna usher you along into your next gig in the best way possible.
It was very crazy. It was very crazy.
So before we leave MADD TV and depart into Wicked, we have to talk about the fact you like are crazy with impressions. It's kind of amazing. I want to talk about so your celebrity impressions, and also the amazing characters that you created on MADD TV. Some of them, Amy Little, Annetta Busley. Is that how you say the last name?
I don't remember some of these people.
Candy Matsumoto, Charlene, Disney Girl, Elisa, Holly, Pat Beth LaMontrose, Sharon, Tony Gorse, and Tori McClanahan. And I think
I don't know some of those people. I think they were just in one sketch, and someone thought they were like a recurring character. They were not.
But still, like, so then the ones I feel like resonated so much with fans over the years have been Disney Girl and Pat Beth Montrose. So can you tell me about real quickly like the creation of like where those came from, and maybe give us a little sample?
Oh boy, Disney Girl I actually auditioned with. That's what's crazy about that. That was something that just made me laugh from the very beginning, which was like someone waking up in like, you know, an alleyway or something, or someone in a terrible situation, but they were just like, you know, what a wonderful day, and like, you know, instead of like a bird, it's like a syringe on her finger. I don't know, it just made me laugh, and also
the reason why it kind of reminds me of what is that movie with what's her?
Well, listen, when Enchanted came out, I was like,
that one.
I already did that, guys.
I was like, that we've seen that, but
already did it. And then I was like, dang it, I should have tried to pitch it as a movie.
Yeah, right.
In fact, I remember I was in New York and saw Amy Adams. It was the summer they were shooting it. And I was like, I love Amy Adams, but I was like, oh, dang it.
I know.
Yeah, that's funny, TJ. I had the exact same thought. We were, the second Disney song won an Emmy. That's why people think I'm an Emmy winner, because it was my character and I helped write the song, but it's okay. I wasn't in the guild at the time. So the two gentlemen who also wrote it, you know, they won an Emmy for it, which is, I'm excited I won an Emmy. That's cool. But it's someone on Wikipedia thinks I won an Emmy, and I've been introduced several times as Emmy winning Nicole Parker. The first thing I have to say when I get on a stage, I'm like, I didn't win an Emmy.
Yeah.
I don't want anyone thinking I won an Emmy when it's not true. Although maybe it doesn't, who knows? Maybe it doesn't matter. But yeah, so Disney Girl was like way back. And to be honest, it was also just a really cheap reason to find a way to sing in my audition. I sang in my audition as much as possible. And the great thing about the audition was, I don't know another audition that's like this, except for stuff like auditioning for SNL and for MADD TV. You get to do whatever you want. They say do 6 impressions, 6 characters, or 3 impressions, 6. They don't care as long as you're funny. Like I did like 12 impressions and like 2 characters, you know? Right. And if you're in the middle of the audition and it's going well, I added stuff. I improvised stuff. Like you leave that room being like, I did absolutely everything I possibly could have done, you know, and I got to make adjustments. It was the most satisfying audition ever. So that's what Disney Girl was. And then Beth Montrose was, Jordan and I would just sit around and try to gross each other out. Like the more someone would go, ooh, like at a joke, the better it was. And I really wanted to do something with him that was, because, you know, he came from it was kind of a joke on some people that we know in our lives, that like some of my mom's colleagues and whatnot, that they mean well, but they say all the wrong things, you know, and things come out wrong. And I just thought it'd be funny to put that in a relationship with someone like Jordan, in a multiracial relationship, and have him really love her, but be like, oh, that's just not right. You know, she wears her hair in a very like spiky blonde, you know, and wears many sort of tribal necklaces, and just is just very uninformed. What's kind of crazy is my mom has a couple of colleagues at where she taught at Cal State Dominguez Hills who saw that sketch and they were like, oh my God, I know couples like that, or I know a woman like that, or, you know, which kind of, I was like, okay, good. So it's something that I recognize that other people recognize, you know.
I think that that's like what made so much of what you did so wonderful, is that and sketch comedy in general, why it becomes, and I feel like the most incredibly intelligent comedians that don't resort to like dirty stuff, which is of course has its own audience and is super fun. But like Ellen DeGeneres is like the cleanest comedian on the planet, but it's all relatable, which is makes it so funny. And I think that's like where you really made such an impact, is that everything was like so relatable on some level.
That's nice. That's nice to hear. I mean, that's the thing. The first night doing that sketch, we were like, we'll see if this works.
Yeah.
And then it just did. And it was like, it took a minute, but I mean, gosh, we ended up doing like 6 of them or something, 7. Yeah. I don't know. They were so fun to write. I mean,
so let's talk about like, because I want to talk about like writing too and all that. Because I mean, I want to give like anyone that's interested in sketch comedy or writing, I want to talk about like advice as well. But you also do some celebrity impressions. We got Amy Winehouse, Ashley Simpson.
Oh, no, I don't. Oh, okay, keep going.
Well, I mean,
I feel bad about some of these that I did. Some of these people were in pain, and I feel bad about the Britney one. I would have changed my mind back in the day. I've made a different decision. I would have made a different decision. But anyway,
nonetheless, they happened. So
it happened. It happened.
Spears, Celine Dion, Ellen DeGeneres, Emma Thompson, Fergie, Gwen Stefani, Hillary Clinton, James Blunt. So funny. Jessica Simpson, Joy Behar, Judy Garland, Julie Andrews, Kathy Griffin, Kim Kardashian, Kristen Calvallari, Lauren Conrad, Lucille Ball as Lucy from I Love Lucy, Nelly Furtado, Paula Abdul, Rachel Ray, Renee Zellweger, Sarah Palin, Sarah Silverman, Terry Hatcher, Vivian Lee. Good grief, that list. Amazing. So, and all like insanely, scarily accurate and amazing. And obviously your vocal talents help you do a lot of these artists. Is there a favorite of yours, of all of them? If you're like, this is like my go-to, I just love putting this skin on. You know what I mean? I mean,
I'm probably just Ellen, just because she's the most easy to like just riff as, you know, because it doesn't matter what she says, because she's always just stream of consciousness, you know. Yes. So I end up doing it in concerts a lot. I sing at in symphony concerts, and some conductor knew I did impressions and thought it'd be funny if I sang. I think I do it. I've done it with many songs, but like I Dreamed a Dream, or like you know, I've done it with the Titanic.
Says his favorite is Ellen DeGeneres doing Wicked. Can we have a sample?
Did that really just happen? Have I actually understood? Sorry, I just have to stop for a second. Do you ever wonder if witches? I just wonder about why the broom. You know, because if the broom, I wouldn't look at a broom and think I want to fly that. You know, I'd put a seat on it. You know, at least a bicycle seat. I don't know. I don't understand. I'm sorry. I forget your question. TJ, I apologize. I was thinking about witches and brooms, and I don't remember.
Okay, you are mind blowing. Like I was I that was amazing. Have you ever, because I know that have you ever done a sound alike for her ever? Like, because this has
been a long-standing issue, because I've heard that she doesn't like being impersonated. I know she knows I exist, although again, like she had her on. It just depends. It can't be from MADD TV, because I don't think she liked that someone was doing her way before anyone was doing her. And I've had to audition so many times to do sound alikes, either for like the Dory character or whatever.
Well, yeah, because they have sound alikes for Dory all the time.
I got a job doing it for Animaniacs, and I was like, this is Warner Brothers. They're not going to be allowed to do this. But I was like, if I don't get this job, like, you know, I'm going to walk into the ocean. What am I doing?
This is for the reboot or for the original?
It was for the reboot, yeah. And then 2 days later, they're like, oh, it's not happening. I was like, of course it's not, because they were like, it's Warner Brothers, and we can't get away with doing it. She's very strict about that stuff. So it has to be on her terms. So like, I don't know if I'll ever meet her, but I did do this very random gig many years ago, actually, when I was still on MADD. The Fashion Design Awards are this very, very hoity-toity fashion award ceremony that happens at the New York Public Library in New York City. They'd never had someone do this before, but they were like, we thought it'd be really fun to have you introduce an award as Ellen. But I mean, it was hosted by like Claire Danes, and you know, Oprah was giving a Lifetime Achievement Award to Ralph Lauren. Like, it was that kind of event. And then I'm there dressed as Ellen, and I said, all I want to make sure is that I don't follow Oprah. They're like, oh, she's nowhere near in the program. You won't get anywhere near her. I was like, good. But she had some sort of schedule change, and she had to like get on a plane to her school, her girls' school in Africa, literally like that minute after the thing. And they're like, you're going on after her. And I am honestly on backstage with like 7 different designer bags on me, because I was presenting designer bags. I thought it'd be funny if I was wearing them all. So I'm literally covered in like thousands of dollars worth in like an Yves Saint Laurent white tux. And I'm backstage, and she's right there. Oprah's right there. And she actually had to scoot in front of me when she came off, and I went, "Hi, Oprah." And she was like, "Hi."
Like, I had that moment with Cher, by the way. I had a moment where Cher and I, like, we were, if we hadn't said something to each other, it would have been awkward. I know that sounds weird because why would she ever say anything to me? But I was just like, because I'm not even like a Cher fan. I have such a huge respect for obviously like the mega person that she is. But I was just like, I think you're awesome. Like, oh, thank you so much. And she like held my hand, her their limp, like very cold hand. And I was just like, I met Cher. What? And I would have, if Oprah had scooched by me, I would have been like, oh, excuse me, sorry. I would have like absolutely bumped into her. I love that you said hi,
Well,
Oprah.
it was crazy because then just 2 years ago, I ended up doing a very similar gig. Not actually very similar. It was David Geffen's 75th birthday party, and I got asked. Again, I know I met Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson through Marty Short because they're best friends, and they would come and see. Rita was doing Chicago at the time, and so we'd all meet for drinks after his show and our show. And they needed someone. They wanted to give David like an old-fashioned Broadway show, but they also wanted some comedy. And they were like, "Oh, you can come do your impressions." And I was like, "Who's gonna be at this thing? This is David Geffen." And it's the first time I ever did a gig with impressions where I had to ask if the people were going to be there. I was like, "Is Diane Keaton going to be there?" You know. And Diane Keaton's easy because if you have your hat, you just go. I can't. I mean, really, are you kidding me? I can't do this. This is so stupid. No, I'm not doing it. Okay, come on. And I was like, I have to make sure that she's not going to be there. And she was supposed to be there. Bette Midler was there and Goldie Hawn was there. Two of the three of the Fives Club. But Oprah was also there. Oprah was at that one. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. I'm about to go out and do Ellen again in front of Oprah. But that time I actually got to meet her afterwards. And like, she doesn't remember. I didn't even bring up the last one because I was like, I don't want to remind her that I was that weirdo.
Right.
But if you guys follow me on Instagram, I got bored one day. It was like while those rains were happening the first weeks of the quarantine. I was like, I need to figure out some new impressions. There's so many good women to impersonate now, like in their 40s and 50s. So I've been working on some. I've been working on some Laura Linney and some Holly Hunter and some.
Laura Linney's a good one because I've been watching Ozark, and that's she's so specific. Her vocal cadence. Yep. I think I would say you as a musician, I would imagine that has allowed your list to be as long as it is because you can hear voices like music, I'm imagining.
That, but also what I say is my mom was a speech therapist, and so she actually, I would actually ask her what her certain patients had going on with them, and she would say, well, this one has an overbite or an underbite or a lisp or a lateral lisp, and she taught me all of those things. And so I always start with the mouth when I do an impression.
Amazing.
So, like Laura Linney, she kind of just swallows all of her words, you know.
She does. She totally does.
Yes, she does, especially when she gets emotional. But then, you know, she has a smile. And like Julia Garner, the Ruth, you know, she sort of has everything front. What? You can go. Well, I can't do any impressions of her because there's children, but because but
literally just you saying what I watched an episode this morning and I was like, that's her. That's insane. Insane. So good.
Anyways, I'm editing that right now.
It's so good. Okay. So you then, whilst doing MADD TV, you book Wicked. So then you replaced actually my friend. We caroled on Main Street together. Marcy Dodd, love her. You replaced her on the Broadway. Talk about, because you mentioned the message boards. Every single woman that I know that has played that role, and whether it be as a standby that ended up eventually taking over, being cast immediately in the part, being the understudy, whatever it is, there has been good, the bad, and the ugly. And sometimes a lot more of the latter too. So what was your experience? I know you did it for 6 months, and then later again, you did the North American tour, right? In like 2012 or something like that.
I did it for 7 months on Broadway, and I did it for about 6 months on tour.
Okay.
And I wish it had been the other way around.
Oh, I'm sure. So what were because I always feel like, I do feel like that model, while people don't get it at the time, especially when they're just trying to get their first gig and their dream is to be on Broadway, it's like, do you realize you get you don't have the pressure, and you have pressure, but you're on the road and you get to like inhabit it's like a big long dress rehearsal, and then you get to go on Broadway and then like make your mark, you know what I mean, in a way. But what was that like for you doing both of those? How different were those experiences? And just give us a little insight into your Wicked journey.
Well, it really was weird because I never thought of myself as, I mean, I'm a theater nerd through and through. I mean, I was dancing to Cats in my bedroom at 7. I was doing Annie, the whole production at set, you know, so it was weird to get there to New York. And I'd already done Broadway too. Like I'd already been, but I felt like it didn't really count because we were just like misfits doing this crazy show that only a few people saw, and there were only 6 of us, and like some of the most massively talented people ever, but it was like it almost felt like a variety show. Like, but I sang on that stage. I sang on a Broadway stage, was never nervous.
Right.
So it was weird to be my second Broadway show, but I felt like it was my first. And I felt like I was all of a sudden being judged when I never felt that before. Because when you do a new original musical, no one is sitting in the audience comparing you to anybody.
Yep.
So they listen to you differently. They're just listening to a new song they never heard before, and they're like, oh, that's how she sings it. She's fabulous. They're listening to Wizard and I, they're like, I don't like how she does that riff. Oh, she didn't get that note the way the other girl did. That's exactly what you're doing in your head as you're watching that person cross the stage, especially if you're a fan. It's like you can't even help it.
Because it's really like it's like unlike the tourists that are going to react to it in a different way, who have only maybe heard the album, versus like what they used to call like the rent heads, the people that would go to the show incessantly.
But of course, we don't care about that. We care about the people at the stage door who are talking to you, you know, and know what they're talking about. And I always felt like I was walking the stage with like 9 women behind me, like in like silhouette, sort of. That's what it feels like. And so what I was also surprised though by is because I got into rehearsal and I'd have the stage manager say to me like, we were just so surprised. We were like, oh, I don't know, TV coming in, doing theater. We thought, you know, you wouldn't have your lines. I'm just like, I've been doing theater my whole life. It's just so funny how people have a perception that I'm just like, it was a stupid sketch show. It's funny that you would think that means I'm a TV person. So that's what I mean by it was really backwards how things happened for me, because I never thought of myself that way. And I still don't think of myself that way. So it was weird for them to be surprised that I was professional and showed up on time and learned my lines. And I, on purpose, made sure to know everybody's name in that building when I showed up, and made sure to, which I think is a great thing to do anyways, and know everybody's name, from the crew to the dressers to everybody. And because I kind of had a feeling, I was like, maybe they won't take me seriously, or maybe they just won't think I care, or and so that was the first sort of thing. And then it's very fast and it's very scary. And I had actually showed up, I had actually had to take a week longer because I was having a little trouble with my voice. It kind of came out of nowhere. This is also important to talk about because now at least finally people are talking about vocal injury. And I never had another thing, knock on wood, happen. But I'd had like a resolving hemorrhage, so I didn't have anything wrong with me anymore, but the doctor could see there was still something kind of resolving there. But mentally, that was a terrible way to jump into Elphaba. Because my brain, and I was younger, I did not have the training I have now. I was just like, oh no, it's going to happen again. And so I could not get myself. Elphaba is like sports psychology. Elphaba is all mental, like in some ways. Like, yes, you have to have a good training technique. You have to have a good plan for how you're going to rest at night. But like, my gosh, it's like 75% mental. It really is. If you get stuck mentally, that's what happens to everyone in that role, because you're not only dealing with the sort of toll it's taking on your social life and your physical life and your voice, but like I said, you get to the stage door. And for me, I was getting people saying stuff like, and this is only like 5 people, right? But it doesn't matter. You know, someone said to me right off the bat, you're getting better. And I was like, what? That was new to me. I just had never known someone could just say right to your face something like that. And it was really upsetting, and it got right in there. And I think if I had been in a different place, if I had come in feeling fully healthy, you know, you only get one put in. I did have a cold for that put in. I had a cold for my first show because I had to fly back and shoot one scene from one movie that I was doing in LA. It was really unlucky timing. My put in happened, and I remember the second it was over, I was like, I burst into tears. I was like, I'll never be able to do that again. That's the hardest thing I've ever done. Can't do that again. I was like, how am I going to do that 8 times a week? Like, I was a mess, you know? It's terrifying. It is, especially at the time.
Like, I think it's unreal out of every role that gets a matinee person that goes on every week, that Elphaba is not one of those parts.
Not to mention Christine Daae is like lip syncing that high E, you know? Like,
exactly.
Oh, okay.
Like, all right. So
the only thing that is pre-recorded is the scream at the end when she melts, which is like, that's not even that hard. That's the only thing that is, you know. But my put-in was on the day that Sully landed the plane in the Hudson, and like
Oh.
everyone was telling me about that, and I was like, no, what I just did was hard. And it was like, I'm kidding. But it was really like, everyone was nonplussed about my put-in. They're just like, look at what's happening 2 blocks away. And then boom, you're just doing it. It was not nearly as much preparation as I needed or wanted. And I understood at the time, it's not as big a deal now. There's too many other shows. There's Hamilton, there's everything. But at the time it was the show. It was the show that people waited a year for because they couldn't get tickets for it. So the pressure of that too, of like, well, this is their one day to see it. They flew from who knows where. They spent money they might not have had. I got to do it right. Or you see someone with their phone in the front row and they're doing this and they're not watching you. And then you're like, that's going to be on YouTube later. They're going to say that I wasn't good. You shouldn't be thinking about that stuff. You should be singing your song. But that's unfortunately what happened. And when I listen to some of the recordings, I can hear how afraid I am in my voice. I'm like, that's not my voice. And so I was the first girl to have to do it on Broadway, cold turkey, without anything beforehand. That's the opposite of cold turkey. But right away, like straight out of the gate, without having any experience prior. And they've since done that with other girls, but they've had like, I think they've had bigger followings in New York than I had. And so I think people were just like, who is this girl? And they want you to be perfect on the very first night, which I honestly don't blame them, but I just couldn't get there, you know?
What was your what was your rehearsal like how long?
I think it was like 3 weeks.
Okay.
And you rehearse in the building. They have a rehearsal room, which is really cool, but it's stressful because it's on and the TV is on and the show's on. And the craziest thing I have to say is when you shadow, like I shadowed Marcy, but I also shadowed Mamie Paris when I did it on Broadway. I'm on a tour in Denver, having to go back into it 3 years later at altitude in Denver. I don't recommend that either. But I had a new vocal coach. I had lived my life. I had, it's still stuck in the back of my head sometimes to be in the kitchen, literally like, let's find gravity on. Let's just try to find gravity on. And I never would finish the song. I was like, oh, I'm not getting paid to do this right now. I'm just too hard. I'm not doing this. But I knew I wanted to do it again. And I'm so glad I got to, because finally, and Allie was doing it with me. And she was like, buddy, this time just like do it for yourself. And she was like, we're going to have fun this time. Because she's the one who saw that I could come in afterwards. And she's like, you would just be so hunched over and so exhausted and so just depleted. And it's true. And this time I was like, I'm going to enjoy it. I don't care what people think. I don't care what people say. And again, it was like 4 people out of like thousands of people that saw it. So it's funny how it makes such an impact. But both times I shadowed the girl, I was like, this is not doable. I was like, I did this once. How did I do this once? Because it's like, you're watching a girl just do this crazy, crazy job. She comes up, the energy you get from like someone coming off right after No Good Deed, and they're very focused and you have to like do this thing with your wig and they give you water. And she's so laser focused looking in the mirror and like sweating and trying to come down from like that song, and she's in the heavy dress. And you're just like, oh my God, it's like, this looks so hard. And all the running and all the changing and you can feel them just vibrating. And it's like, I know I did that, but watching Mamie the second time, I was like, well, I can't do this again. It's like the kind of the job that when you step outside and watch it again, you're like, whoa, how did I do that? Like, you appreciate that it's hard. And at the same time, I never felt more strong and powerful than when I did it, especially on tour. Like finishing an 8-show week, you felt like an Olympia. I was like, this is the closest this theater nerd will ever come to an athlete, because I was just like, 8 shows, bam, did it. Yep. Now, there was never a show that I was like, nailed it, perfect. It just doesn't happen,
No, and I mean, especially like as artists, we're always going to be so self-critical and everything anyway. But okay, so then
I will just say this last thing. The takeaway was the days I would have a rough time, I would think, so many people would kill to be in this chair. This is such an honor to be in this chair. I can't believe I got to do it twice. The days that I would have a hard time, I pretend that it was like now. And I was like in a dream, remembering getting to go do the show one more time. And it worked. You have to do so many mental gymnastics, whatever it works, whatever it takes to get you through that show. And the people there that work there on the crew and everything in both companies are incredible. They're a specific type of person. They're all very funny. They should all have their own one-woman and one-man shows. They get you through it. But I'm so glad I did it. But I mean, it is really silly about change for good, but it really does change you. It alters your DNA, I've always said, especially singing that music does. But there's a strict timeline of my career, which is pre-Wicked and post-Wicked, of like how I had to mentally recover from that afterwards, but how it made me better. And so I'm grateful for it. But it is true, it comes with a price. The part totally comes with a price.
Oh, I'm sure. So then comes the crowning moment in your career. playing Fanny Brice for 3D Theatricals.
Again, I couldn't have done with, oh, thanks, which I couldn't have done without Wicked, because it was like, I was like, oh, I can do this. It's so daunting because it's what, like 12 songs or 13 songs, but it's like, yeah, but I also get to be funny. It's not yelling and screaming all the time and everyone on stage looking at you like,
and passionate and singing. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, and like have some fun. And I auditioned for the Funny Girl that was supposed to happen whenever that was, 2000. I was in town. Yeah. I was in New York doing my third Broadway show, People in the Picture, and auditioning several times during the day for that. And then it was announced with Lauren Ambrose, and it was so hard and so devastating, and I wanted it so badly, but I wasn't ready. I wouldn't have been good anyway. And then it got canceled. So then I was like, well, maybe they'll do it around here somewhere. And it's so funny because when I saw that 3DT was doing it, I forget, I think I was out of town or something. I was like, oh, I should have auditioned for that. And I was like, oh, well, if they can't find anyone, maybe they'll,
Well, so this is, so I want to talk about how it all came to be as a little behind the scenes story, because we auditioned the show. We saw everyone that came in for it. And then we were like, we didn't find it. And then we were like, well, let's go look for it. And so then we went and we auditioned what I would consider to be a very famous Broadway name that also wasn't Elphaba, not the first Elphaba, who's going to be doing it later, but who also was an Elphaba. And we met up in LA, and it wasn't.
Be very naughty, TJ. You're making everyone guess.
Well, I know, but I can't say the name. But it was an Elphaba, and she's got a killer set of pipes, and as one has to have when you play that part. But it wasn't the right fit. The heart, the energy, and the read, the acting, it just wasn't the right fit. And so we passed on it. And literally the day that we passed, got the suggestion, what about Nicole Parker? And I was like, I think was it Gretchen?
She's talking, but she's muted. But she's like,
yeah, it was someone. Anyway, so what happened? I get the suggestion that came across my desk, and I was like, huh, who's that? And then I went, because I was like, it sounds so familiar.
I think it was Cammie.
It was Cammie, yes.
Oh.
And I was like, God, it sounds so familiar. And then I got 2 videos and an email from Cammie, and I'm gonna play you the first one that I watched, and that because this is literally, because I was like, well, is she funny and can she sing? And so the 2 videos I got was something from MADD TV, and then the other one was a clip of her singing in Wicked. And I went, after I saw them both, I was like, how do we get her information? We need to hire her. And like all the stars aligned, and of course she did it. But I have to, and because of the internet, this is probably gonna be choppy. You have to look it up if you haven't seen it, but this is just one of my favorite things ever. So I'm gonna share my screen, and hopefully I do this right.
Don't forget to share your audio, TJ.
I know. So, okay, can you all see that?
Yep.
Okay, this is just my favorite.
I'll be right back while you're watching this.
Okay.
Oh, come back. Oh, come back. Please don't go without me. Please come back.
I can't come back. I don't know how it works. Goodbye, folks. Goodbye. Goodbye.
No, I'll never get home.
Stay with us then, Dorothy. We love you. We want you to go.
It's very kind of you, but this could never be like Kansas.
Look, Dorothy. There's someone who can help you.
Oh, my. Oh. Oh, will you help me? Can you help me? You don't need to be helped any longer. You've always had the power to go back to Kansas. Excuse me?
Why didn't you tell her before?
Because she wouldn't have believed me. Are you out of your mind? You came down with a big bottle. I would have believed anything that you said. If you told me that the only way to get home is to lick the lollipop guild, I would have done it.
then you never would have met us.
I could have done without the three of you. Teenage girl skipping down the road with three dudes. I had to sleep with my hands between my legs. I thought I had the dog.
You didn't have to be afraid of me, Dorothy.
Believe me, I picked up on that right away, tinsel toes. How do I get home, witch? Just click your heels. Click my heels? Listen, baby talk, I'm about a hair away from punching you in the face.
Please don't, Dorothy.
Zip it, homo. So I click my heels. But it better be more complicated than that, or I'm gonna go ballistic.
It's much more complicated than that. You have to click your heels and say, there's no place like home. There's no place like home. I would have been home in 2 seconds.
I could have been home 2 seconds after I got here.
Oh, there are many other ways you could have gotten home. You could have clapped your hands. You could have winked or brushed your eyelash. You could have sneezed or turned your head quickly. Any of those ways, and you would have been home.
Oh, you psycho glitter bitch! I almost went up in a balloon with that crazy old man. You're enjoying this, aren't you? Sick. You're so much worse than the other witches. Well, at least I knew where I stood with them. You're two-faced.
I was just trying to help you. I was trying to teach you a lesson.
Teach me a lesson? You're not my parents. My parents are dead. I live with my auntie Anne and three creepy uncles who are pawing at me every day and telling me how pretty I look in my checkered dress. Teach me a lesson. How dare you?
That's good. That's good.
There's no place like home. There's no place like home.
All right, skip it. Skip that part. It's fine.
Right, yes, exactly. I'm gonna stop sharing. You guys, she's freaking brilliant. So I was like, I had already known that sketch and died laughing, and then getting to see her belt her face off, and then getting the chance to have her, do a very iconic and another role that comes with a big shadow behind you. You just conquered it with every ounce of your being, and it was amazing. And you had to be recostumed the day that
On that, I was already bringing that up. TJ made that happen. You were amazing. Thanks first of all for the opportunity to do that show. It was really one of the best jobs I've ever had and the best cast ever. And everything just came, it was just one of those times everything just comes together just right. But only because you went back and got every costume from every corner of the county and made it look gorgeous. So thank you for that.
Well, thank you. And we have to have you back at 3D. We have been threatening to, now you're a mama and balancing all that, but we got to have you back so bad. We talk about you all the time, and we've been trying to revive. Funny Girl was one that we've been trying to revive.
And
but,
I don't know if you know, but I live so close now. I live in Anaheim. I could like bike to the rehearsal space.
Oh my God. Well, then we have to get lunch when this is all over.
Yes.
We have to discuss some projects that we could have you back on, because it would just be our pleasure. I can't do that.
Maybe it'll just be, I know, I don't know anyone that wouldn't resign. Dylan, right? Would you do Funny Girl again? You're going to sign on again, right? We would do that in a heartbeat. I feel like the whole cast would do it in a heartbeat.
Heck yes. If the revival doesn't go or gets pushed back yet again, because that's been the reason why we haven't been able to revive it, is they've had rights for forever.
You have to keep hogging it and then not using it.
I know, exactly. So, but I mean, I talked about this with you earlier. Like, I totally would campaign for everything to get you to be the standby for that show.
And I already told my husband, I was like, we are moving across the country with the baby if I get that job, just so you know. But it's going to be all the ladies. That would be the funniest room in the world. It's like all these total divas and some of them Tony winners now who would be right there, like, I'm going to do this. It would be the most tension-filled room, but it would be great.
It would be similar to, they had, the standbys they had for Bette Midler were stars too. You know what I mean? It's the same.
I mean, well, they were like even bigger stars than we would be, but definitely it would be a very talented room and a very stressful situation, but there's no way we wouldn't all be there because it'd be the only chance to get to do, this is in our lifetimes the only chance to get to do it.
100%. Does anyone have anything for Nicole before we let her go back to her beautiful family? Does anyone have any questions or anything?
Yeah, Emily has one in the chat.
My parents are dead.
Emily, EKB, what do you think of the modern sketch comedy climate, and what advice do you have in navigating it? That's a great question.
Oh, well, it's so different now because you can make a sketch and put it on YouTube. Like,
yeah.
There are comedy stars. I spit everywhere. There's comedy stars on Instagram. I mean, I'm about to put all my impressions up on Instagram because I'm like, well, maybe this will entertain people, and like, it's so easy to do. Like, that's what I'm actually kind of jealous of, is people now that want to do that. You don't have to be on SNL, or there's not even MADD TV anymore, but you don't have to be. Like, you will have more control. You will get to be the star of your sketches more often if you just put out your own content. So I think it's fantastic now. I think that especially now, right now, what everyone wants is something to make them laugh, is something to take them. I mean, it is interesting that everyone's looking for something to watch, something to binge, something to, to create. And this is it's a great time. I have a podcast. I do a podcast on Stitcher called The Neighborhood Listen that I did with Paul F. Tompkins. It's an all improvised podcast. And I mean, podcasting is honestly where all of the sketch and improv comedians have gone to even before this happened, but now, so it's even more a great way to be creative and to get, your music out there. I also guest on Off Book a lot, which is an improvised musical podcast, which is great if you want to listen to that. But I'm saying, it was a plug, but it was also to say that that's what I've started doing now. And that's what a lot of improvisers and sketch comedians have started doing is podcasting. Because again, it's like, you don't have to sit and wait around for someone to give you the permission to do it anymore, which is fantastic. So put it just out there, the Instagram, Twitter, whatever, TikTok. But I think that's all great. Like, that's just something, and to be honest, that is something that people do look at now. What is your social media presence, and do you have followers, and that can help you get a job these days. And who knows, it's all going to change now after this. So it's probably even better if you're creating your own content. You can, you have something you can show that people were watching during this period of time. So I'd say that sketch is not like what it used to be in terms of very basic nuts and bolts of, give us like a Carol Burnett sketch where it's like there's A, B, and C, and this happens, and this happens, and this happens. And now I think it's so much more malleable and sort of can be, like set up joke. Like, what's funny is changing, and it's always changing. And I would still love to see like an old-fashioned variety show come back. Like, if I was, Kristen Chenoweth with Fame or Dee Menzel Fame, I actually tried pitching a variety show several times. I even tried pitching it as a podcast. So maybe something will still happen like that. I would love to do even, something like it during this weird time. But I think something old-fashioned like that still has a place in the world. But I do think that the face of sketch has changed just because the method of delivering it has changed. And I think it's great.
So TJ, it looks like TJ got kicked off, so I decided to hop on here. Hey, but are there any other questions for Nicole? Oh, it looks like TJ's coming back in.
There he is.
Oh, there he is. Yeah.
TJ, come towards the light.
That was wild. All of a sudden, like, everyone was frozen, and I was like, oh God, their internet. And then I was like, oh no, it's
me. That's funny. The internet's coming inside the house.
Man, yeah. So I'm assuming you answered that question.
I did, and I nailed it.
I'm sure you did.
Nailed the landing.
I have a follow-up though. Like, do you have, and then we'll let you go unless anyone else has any other questions. But do you have any advice for people that are looking to pursue sketch in a more professional or larger, setting, whether it's to write, in writing, like, since I know you do both, how do you suggest getting those juices flowing? And obviously I'm assuming it's just being around people that do it and immersing yourself in that community. But
yeah, but it's also improv. I mean, take an improv class, because that's actually where all sketches come from. At Second City and at Boom Chicago, we actually did what they did at Second City, which is called a pad set, which is after each show, when they're writing a show, even after they've done a show for 2 hours, they take a huge white pad and they get a bunch of suggestions from the audience, and someone sits there and goes, okay, I would like to see a scene where I mean, this is old reference, but like what we used to, we're seeing where Britney Spears you know, goes to apply for a bank loan. Like they would take two things, put
Can
them
you
together.
do it right now?
Oh, jeez. I shouldn't have said her because I don't do her anymore because I just feel like she was put through enough and I'm just not okay
You're
with
making
that.
a Broadway musical
No
about
way.
a woman.
Right? It's not fair to me. There. How about that? Uh-oh, now everyone else froze. I have no idea if anyone's laughing. Oh, there's the response. Wow, it's really terrifying to do this on Zoom when like everyone's just like, and then they go like that, and you're like, oh, thank God that worked. Anyways, that is what we would do. So you'd improvise a scene, and then if it was good, the next day you'd write out the beats and say, hey, that could become a sketch. That's pretty much how most sketches that you know and love became sketches. I mean, that or just sitting around and yes, like talking with like me and Jordan trying to make ourselves laugh. But a lot of it came out of improv. And so most sketch writers, most comedians still will have taken some improv classes just to learn what it is to even map out what's funny and why it's funny. And I know Gretchen does Groundlings. You know, Groundlings is great, although they have a really long waiting list. UCB will let, you know, they'll take anybody. I don't mean that. It's just the Groundlings is like a very, very specific way of doing it. And UCB is like, no, you still have to go through all of their classes. But Second City in Hollywood and LA actually is very good. There's now a place called the Wolf Den, I think. I don't know, there's quite a few places. And I just think that improv acting is great for acting lessons in general. I just think that improv is another type of acting class.
Yes.
And so even if you never think you're going to use it or do it or don't even like comedy, I would still take improv.
Hell yeah, it will help you when stuff falls apart on stage and you need to get through it. It's like only going to aid you ever.
No, and it also just teaches you, listen to your partner, take care of your partner, and react truthfully. That's literally what the rules are. And don't try, don't think, you know, it really is just about an immediate response. So it's just great training in general, even if you never think you're going to go into comedy or have no interest in it or whatever.
I've seen, like, you can even see in some sketches, like on SNL, one of my favorites, I'm blanking on the names, but it's Kristen Wiig and oh gosh, they go on the weekly update, and they're like, no, and they're like the singing couple that is like trying to
Fred Armisen and her, where they make
Fred Armisen.
I love that.
Fred Armisen. And I'm like, when you can tell that they're playing the game where she's just she's following him, like she's looking at him and has no idea what's about to come out of his mouth, and she's trying to follow along with him and harmonize with it and all this stuff. And it's just like, that's just literally two characters that are playing an improv game, like as a sketch, and it's brilliant. So yeah, it's so good. Anyway.
Dylan, I just saw you said they should have made the movie about your put it instead. That's funny. Yeah. Oh, jeez.
You guys, a huge round of applause for this incredible woman who's here with us today.
And all the people I can't see.
Yeah, I know, right? But thank you. Thank you, Nicole, from the bottom of my heart. We have got to get you back at 3D and get you on. Oh, there's Donna Parsons. I love her.
She came on for a second.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, thank you. And yeah, I hope you guys all have an incredible rest of your day. Later this week, we have Chris.